Part 2. Jerusalem. Alexander was staring out at the holy city from the cockpit of his hellchopper. Shaylee was sitting behind him, watching his movements. Alex was glad she was here and hadn't left him after their last conversation. She helped balance him out, kept him honest, and was a better companion than the unpredictable Hollis Keller, even if all he did in flight was chain smoke and redress his wounds. He thought it felt good to be active again. Alex had learned the lesson his old friend Sam Gates had attempted to teach him. Survival for survival's sake meant nothing if the survivor had nothing to live for. Alex had a fight to finish, a fight he had rekindled in Newcastle upon Tyne. Watching the harbor and military base explode reminded Alex of the troop convoys he ambushed back when his revolution had started over a year ago. Seeing the enemy go down like that was an adrenaline rush that could not be repeated anywhere else. Shit, it's only been a year. Feels like it's been much longer. So many new scars on my face, arms, and my soul. Eli, Jack, Talia, Tyler, Sam, Layla. What the hell would I say to them if they were still here? Alex brought the hellchopper down outside the city walls. Sand and dust kicked up all around the sides of the bird as it touched the ground. So is he going to be here to meet us? Alex asked, turning his head halfway back to Shaylee. Honestly, I don't know. We were in the UK for longer than expected. The last time I heard from him was when I was flying to you. Alex stood up and moved towards the door to the main hold. Well, this is going to be interesting. We're either going to get shot or greeted with open arms. As Alex and Shaylee made for the hold, Hollis Keller was waiting. There were cigarette ashes all over the floor of the hold, and at least 30 burnt-out butts neatly set in an old water bottle. Keller had managed to put on the parts of his clothes that weren't burned, and covered himself in some spare new purgatory fatigues that were sitting in storage. Alex thought it made Keller look more soldier than mercenary, an irony that was not lost on the rugged man. "This is real?" Keller asked as the rear bay door opened. The sun lit up on their faces. "I figured you would have been here before. Lots of work for a man like you," Alex replied. "Maybe for teams or small-time crooks. I never settled for less than leaders, people with actual money, or at least influence. Counselors here were always too busy listening to their superiors to build up their own schemes. None, at least, that requires a man such as me. They're too scared to rock the boat for fear of losing their spot," Keller explained. "I thought it would be the opposite. Power grabs and that sort of petty bullshit," Shaylee added. "It helps when your competition works in the same room as you all day. Can't really plot to kill a guy sitting across from you, usually," Keller answered. "Point taken," Shaylee said. There was no one there to meet them, but Alex wasn't surprised at the icy reception. They were late, and the last time he had seen New Purgatory's counselor was just after Layla had been murdered. He imagined his disappearing act had rubbed many people the wrong way. Janet's likely furious. She wanted to march on Berlin after that happened, but I left her alone, again. Fuck only knows how Beruger's failed attack shifted the power balance, and how much time he's had to blame someone else. No sense in standing around. Let's get inside the city and head for their chambers. We'll find our man one way or another," Alex said. Tyrese Vale was watching the cameras of Jerusalem's landing pads just outside the city. For the first time in months of long debates, posturing, and waiting, he was excited. Without a moment to spare, he reached for the radio and contacted Janet in New Purgatory. There was heavy static over the line. He was always being monitored, likely by Berlin, but this information was too important not to share. "This is Trishella." Janet's voice crackled over the line. "Janet, it's good to hear your voice." "Tyrese, is everything all right?" "Yes. I know this line is for emergencies, but I have news that can't wait." "Go ahead, Tyrese. I just hope to God it's good." "Shaylee was successful. She brought him here. It appears the man attempted to bring him in, and the outskirts has joined him as well." The static played over the silence from Janet's end of the line. Vale waited a few moments for a reply, and tapped his fingers on his desk. "He's a bounty hunter, Tyrese. I got a hold of some contacts after Vixer gave me his description. Apparently he was working for Cinch, likely monitoring us for Beruger, but saw a bigger payday. Be careful around that one. Alex might trust him, but you know where that's gotten us before. Have you spoken with him yet?" "No, but I assume they're coming here. I'll outline everything we talked about and present it to him. It'll convince him. I know it. If losing Layla wasn't enough, then I don't know what will motivate him. I want you to see what his mental state is like. We don't need him turning into Jack Newsom. Not now. We're too close to the other nations agreeing to our terms, Janet replied. I understand. What about that agent you've been in contact with? Have you learned any more? Janet's end went silent again, but Tyrese was growing tired of waiting. Janet? Sorry. Yes, I have. I can't discuss it now, but they might be all we need to end the fight quickly. With Alex in the fold, it's guaranteed, Janet replied, her voice somber. Should he know? Vale asked. You and I both know the answer to that. He needs his anger focused. Let it play out as it needs to. Until then, I want Alex under control. What do you want me to do? Tie him with a straitjacket? Vale asked. I want you to make sure he doesn't kill anyone important, at least not anyone in Jerusalem. I don't know what he's like right now, but it sure as shit can't be good. He lost his balance when Layla was murdered. Keep him even, cigarettes, alcohol, whatever it takes. And if you can't do it, then you need to get Shaylee too, Janet ordered. Tyrese shook his head. He had a tough time imagining Alex becoming an addict, even after all the man had went through. And to control him through such means only to unleash him on the enemy didn't feel right. It made the hero seem more like an animal, or worse, a slave. And Tyrese, there's one more thing. Whatever happens, we must let it play out. Alex has and always will choose his own path. We'll continue to do what we think is right, and if he chooses to diverge from it, then we have to trust him. What if we can't? What if that divergence means conflict? Then we do what we have to do, Janet replied. The line cut out after that. Tyrese sat in his chair with a blank expression. To him, it seemed that Janet was losing too. Maybe they all were. And Alex was at the core of it all. I'll do what I can, Tyrese whispered into the empty static. Goodbye, Janet. He hoisted himself from the chair in the supply cabinet he had turned into an office. It was solitary, nothing but himself, a desk, and his art he had painted on what was once bleak sandstone walls. Tyrese checked himself in the mirror. He knew that many of the counselors chose to wear suits or dresses to the meeting. He had upgraded from tank tops and fatigue pants to a collared shirt and jeans. The other counselors called it informal behind his back, but Tyrese knew they were all afraid of him and what New Purgatory's rise to ascension meant. Every negotiation was a power struggle between himself and the German head of state, Jens Eberhardt. The votes always ended in Tyrese's favor. Thomas Beruger's attack on New Purgatory had done that work for him. Russia, Japan, and Egypt saw no issue with voting one way. Australia and Jerusalem attempted to remain neutral, but there had never been a deadlock in a vote. Though as Tyrese straightened his collar, he knew the next vote would not pass without controversy. Lots of people all in one place, Keller said as he brushed by 3 different people. Never seen so many cultures in one place. First time I came here, I was getting shot at, Alex replied. That building we're heading towards? The one that's blown up? We did that. You what? Shaylee asked. We blew it up and killed a counselor. Almost killed all of them. We wanted to send a message, Alex answered. Best way to get results, I'd say, Keller added. Shaylee rolled her eyes and kept following the pair. She watched Keller closely. The man was still recovering from his injuries and burns, as evidenced by the many bandages covering his body, but that didn't slow him down, nor the speed of his hands. She watched him brush by a man and swipe his wallet without even looking down. She wanted to call him out, but making a scene at this time wasn't called for. While Keller picked through it, Shaylee shook her head. He had confided in her, but a part of her found him to be like every other pit fighter or mercenary she had stitched up before. A man for hire would steal, murder, and destroy for profit and thrill. That wasn't a man to her. It was a monster with license to walk amongst honest people and not be considered a beast. For some reason, Alex respected him for that, but for the life of her, she couldn't figure out why. Still, that did not mean that her attraction of Alexander had faded. It had grown stronger. Seeing him heavily bearded, and with his long hair and the reins of the United Kingdom, hit her in the heart. So badly she wanted to take care of him, to make him whole again, but she couldn't voice those feelings, for she knew Alex would reject her outright. More than that, she knew she wouldn't respect herself. Maybe that's why Alex doesn't see me as anything more than a friend. Maybe he views himself that way. I don't know. Maybe the answer was simpler. Alex had loved one woman. He loved Layla. And now that she was gone, Shaylee wondered if Alex would love again after he settled his debt with Beruger. The thought of that frightened her on various levels. Getting to that point where your entire life was destroyed by the thought of a loved one not being in it. If that was the case with Alex, her next fear was what his actions would be. Maybe Janet was right that Alex had become suicidal. That the people around him, those close yet still at arm's reach, were as expendable as the soldiers he gunned down. Still, his old team needed him, his skills, his leadership. Alex had become a beacon, not only to the refugees of New Purgatory, but for the rest of the world. He could lead the other nations to defeat Berlin. Shaylee found herself asking if the sacrifices of one man were worth that. He'll become like Mikhail, a machine that can't remember who he is, why he did what he did. Only in this case, other people will thrive, but he'll be left a shell of what was once a proud man, with ideas and hopes and dreams, shattered. There he is, Alex said, pulling Shaylee away from her thoughts. Tyrese Vale was standing at the top of the stairs that led up to the ruined dome of rock. There was a big smile on his face that Alex did not return, even as he neared his old friend. Alex, it's good to see you again. Likewise, Vale. Why was Shaylee told to bring me here? Vale was taken aback by Alex's directness, but decided to play it off. I was told you came here willingly, that you were finished with your exile and wanted to finish what we started. Alex leaned in next to Vale's ear. Yeah, I did come here willingly, but only because there's someone I need to kill. So I suggest you tell me your plan, so I can see if it falls in line with mine, Alex whispered. Vale's positive expression faded. Janet had been correct. Alex had changed, and his departure from society had not added to the charm and charisma he once had. It is not that simple, Alex. It is that simple. Give me a team and a hell chopper and let me go to Berlin. This will be over in one night, Alex replied, cutting Vale off. Do you remember why you started your war against Morrison? Why you made Janet lead? Why you made me counselor? You did it to make sure shit got done the right way. That's what I'm doing right now. But I need you. If you go off and be a cowboy, we lose everything you fought for and everything our friends died for. Are you ready to make that mistake, Alex? Are you ready to throw everything you did into the trash and let it all fall apart so some asshole like Beruger can pick up the pieces? Alex smiled and looked down at his right fist, balled up and ready to strike. Tyrese knew that body language. He had seen it on New Purgatory streets. But instead, Alex took a deep breath and looked up again. Yeah, now I remember why I picked you. So what do you need so we all get what we want? Alex asked, trying to keep his voice even. Put it simply, a war council. But we can't speak of it here. We need to get you cleaned up and find your team a place to stay. What's wrong with how I look, Vale? Are the counselors really that picky? Alex asked. Shaylee walked up beside Alex and wrapped around his right arm. To her surprise, Alex didn't shake her off. He just turned his head, looked at her and smiled, and then looked back at Vale. I'll help him with that, Tyrese. Just take us there, Shaylee said. Of course. And what about our other friend here? Vale asked. Keller held up a hand to stop Vale from speaking. Not here for the gallivanting. I'll find my way. But how will you? I'm always where I need to be, Keller said, cutting Vale off before he disappeared back into the crowded streets of Jerusalem. Vale looked at Alex, but the sentinel just shrugged. Come on then, Vale said. This way. The room Vale had given them was a studio flat at the top of a Jerusalem hotel. Alex found it to be too much, but Shaylee enjoyed it immediately. It was furnished with all sorts of fine rugs, decor, and couches that Alex imagined only the rich of the old world had seen. He felt guilty as he sat on one of the leather chairs. Stay here for a bit. I know it's less exciting than firing a gun, but at least you'll get some rest. Shaylee makes sure he gets a shower, and at the very least trims himself up to look presentable. We don't need him fearing for their lives like the first time he met him. I gotta go prepare for a meeting. Vale left in a hurry, and Alex gave him a short wave. Shaylee was still meandering the flat until she came upon a separate room. Alex heard her call out. Oh no. He rushed over to her, gun in hand. It fell to his side when he saw that Shaylee was fine, but staring at the king-size bed at the end of the room. Alex let out a sigh. It's fine. I'll sleep on the couch. It's more comfortable than what I've been used to. Shaylee turned around and stared at him, then wrapped her arms around his neck. Alex didn't stop her. He didn't have the energy to. It was another one of her advances, and he wanted to act on it. But all he saw was Layla. Even so, the feelings of her arms wrapped around and the emotions that came with it was hard to ignore. Shaylee brought her face close to his and kissed him. Alex made no effort to match his lips to hers, though. After a few moments, Shaylee pulled back and stared at him again. There was guilt written on her face. Alex knew he had crushed her expectations. He wanted to fix it, but the part of his mind that wanted to raise his arms failed. He just stared back. I'm sorry, she said, turning back around and moving into the room. Alex reached out and grabbed her hand, stopping Shaylee in her tracks. She didn't turn around and Alex didn't let go. He was unsure of what to do next. For moments that felt like hours, they were trapped in time. He pulled her to him. She spun around and was caught by his other arm. Alex pulled her in close and planted a soft kiss on her lips, and then pulled his head away. So am I, he said, and then let her go. Shaylee looked stunned at first, and then smiled. Maybe it had been all she wanted. Maybe it was what she needed. Alex didn't know. A part of him regretted his choice, but if it made her feel better, well, it wasn't the hardest sacrifice he had made. And somewhere recessed in his mind, it made him feel better too. Shaylee stroked a hand on his face, and then made way for the bathroom. Alex made for the bed and sat at the end of it. He removed his old dusty coat and threw it on the floor, and then reached up to scratch his chin through his beard. The normal scruffy shadow of yesteryear had turned into a full brown beard that Alex hadn't bothered maintaining. He didn't see a point to maintaining it anymore. Cosmetic appearance went out the window the moment I left New Purgatory. I wonder if I can make myself care again. Shaylee came out a few moments later with a straight razor and a bowl of shaving cream. Alex stood up and made for their room's balcony and sat back on one of the chairs. Shaylee set the bowl down on the table beside Alex. You or me? She asked. Alex answered by putting a hand in the bowl and scooping up some of the cream. He lathered his face from the sideburns down. The length of his beard made him require more than he thought. Finally, he placed his hands back on the arms of the chair. All right, go ahead, he said. You're not going to ask if I know how to do this? You put guts back in people. I get the feeling you know your way around cutting tools. Lean your head back, Shaylee ordered as she shook her head. Alex did what he was told and was met with Shaylee's blue eyes looking down at him. Then she brought the straight razor up and began shaving him clean. For the faintest of moments, he wondered how things would play out if she made a mistake and sliced him across the throat. But he had to push that thinking aside. He knew Shaylee never would or could do that, all because of her infatuation with him. Alex hadn't understood that and didn't want to. The same reason he didn't want to understand why he couldn't outright break her heart. Usually barbers talk to their clients, at least the ones here do, Shaylee said, as she made another long stroke with the razor. I'll have to brush up on my Hebrew then, Alex replied sharply. Shaylee stopped and let the razor fall to her side. She sauntered around to the front of Alex and stared at him. I thought you put it all to rest, Alex. What's it going to take for you to break out of whatever this is? I know one way. Right now, Alex said as he looked down to the razor at her side. For the briefest of moments, she mistook what he said, and her heart began to beat faster. That was until she remembered the knife in her hand. Shaylee didn't look down, she just sighed and went back behind him. They stayed in silence for a few minutes as Shaylee continued to shave him. So what did it mean? Alex didn't respond. He didn't have the words. The truth was that it felt like the right thing to do at the time, but it also felt wrong. Like he was betraying Layla. He wasn't sure he could explain that to Shaylee. Not without it leading to a fight he didn't have the energy for. It felt right, Alex finally replied. Not quite a lie. Not quite the truth either, he thought. You mean that? Shaylee asked. I don't know, he thought. Yeah, Alex answered. More silence followed. After 30 minutes, Shaylee had finished and was working on Alex's hair with an old pair of surgical scissors. Not a single blood vessel was raised on Alex's face. When it was over, Alex stood and looked in the bathroom mirror. He didn't recognize himself. His beard was gone, and his hair was once again cut close to his head. There were more scars covering his face than a year ago. Most he hadn't even noticed. Long slices, short flaws, and points in between ran along his cheeks, near his eyes, and around his lips. All from his fight to survive, his struggle against the world. He was alone now. Shaylee had decided to take a nap in their bed, and Alex didn't bother disturbing her, even with her request to join her. Instead, he got dressed in a pair of black fatigues, a black shirt, and new polished boots. Before he made for the door, he grabbed his coat. Even though it was warm outside, the contrast of the torn, worn coat was a deterrent for anyone who recognized him, and those that didn't. The change in climate from the United Kingdom was welcome, even at night. He was out not only to stretch his legs, but also his mind. He needed to keep it off Layla and Shaylee. The last thing he needed right now was to find himself in a new relationship with a new person to be responsible for. Or worse, having a casual attitude towards someone who cared for him. Shaylee was nice, beautiful even, but she wasn't Layla. She couldn't replace Layla. No amount of sex or convincing would change that. It was easier to break her heart now by saying no than to play a game with her. He knew that. But that hadn't stopped him from kissing her. He let out a sigh and reached into his coat for a cigarette, and remembered he'd lost them all on the hell chopper. Shit, where the hell am I going to get smokes in a holy city, he thought. Sure, there were people sitting around with hookahs and hand-rolled cigarettes, but Alex only cared for simplicity, not authenticity. He roamed the streets for an hour before finding a store. The man inside glared at him as if he was a thief. Alex didn't care. He had been called worse by worthier men. Cigarettes. Red. 2 packs. Alex dropped a $20 bill on the counter. Money was money these days, no matter where it came from. The counterman turned around and grabbed the packs. "Do you need a lighter?" he asked. Russian. This really is where all the refugees are running to. That makes our odds better, I hope, he thought. No thanks. Alex exited the shop and tore into one of his packs, and then placed the white and yellow stick between his lips. He watched the crowds go by, the sea of different skin tones, clothing, religious symbols, and not a single person with a weapon. His mind flashed to Elias telling him stories from the old books he had read, how Jerusalem always attempted to style itself as a place of peace in a harsh area of the world. But that truth was that they weren't without their own wars or misdeeds. Anyone born after the war would never know such a turbulent history had happened here, or anywhere. The place had become a true sanctuary from violence. Alex lit up his cigarette and puffed on it. He wanted to taste the ash, to feel the smoke cloud up in his body. He wanted it to destroy him in ways the world couldn't. And there was a crackling over his comm. No voice came over. It was just a faint sound. He took a few steps, wondering if it was just interference, but the signal grew stronger. He continued down the crowded alley as the interference laid out a path for him. It finally stopped when he reached an old building. The windows were boarded up, and though many people passed it, it was ignored. Alex took a few steps forward and walked in the front door. He grabbed his sidearm and lifted it. The place was empty. There was broken glass, but no signs of squatters around. Alex wandered until he found a room with graffiti scrawled on the walls. He figured the lights in this place were long dead, but decided to flip the switch on anyway. To his surprise, they came on. There was one long sentence written on in the scrawl. Skyscrapers built atop broken glass tell a story of the present, future, and past. There was a clicking sound. Alex spun around with his pistol, aimed for the center of the room. A glowing ball greeted him, and an image was created from the light it emanated. The light slowly took form in the shape of a man, starting with boots. On up, Alex could see he was tall and strongly built. Then, the facial features appeared. No, Alex said incredulously. Good to see you again, kid. A holographic version of Jack Newsom stood in front of Alex. He dropped his sidearm to the ground, and he was staring at the representation in awe. You're not alive. You can't be alive. Oh, yeah? Says who? Escaping from the tower was, I have your tags. You and Naola's bodies were found away from the wreckage. Who are you? And what are you trying to pull? Alex stammered. Even after all I've done, you still don't appreciate me. Is it so hard to believe that I didn't die, Alex? You've seen what I've done. My resources. Yeah, it is hard to believe. You were ready to die. You gave up everything. You didn't leave that tower alive. So tell me who you really are and what it is you want. The old man let out a long sigh and rubbed his forehead. Alex crossed his arms and waited. It's true, Alex. Jack Newsom is dead. But I am him. I'm also not him. Alex spit his burnt-out cigarette off to the side and reached for a new one. He was shaking his head, wondering if he was in a goddamn dream. You want to stop talking in circles? Alex asked as he lit up the new one. I don't have all night. The old man's hologram had a smile on its face. That's the Alexander I remember. I'll be straight with you, kid. I knew a hell of a lot more about Mikhail Koslov and Thomas Beruger than I let on. Those journals of mine, mostly just trains of thought. Real plans, though. Jack brought up a finger to his temple. We're up here the whole time. That's why we're speaking now. I uploaded a copy of my consciousness to a computer system in New Purgatory. Not too hard after what we found. Sorry, what I found when we were in Seven Nire. Oh, and don't bother getting someone to trace the signal. It's impossible to pinpoint. I made sure of that. I did it to help you should you have killed John Morrison. Alex shook his head. So where the fuck were you 6 months ago? We could have used your knowledge when I built the Sentinels. Sentinels? Long story. The cut version is I ran around the world again to make allies and build New Purgatory's army and status. We're back on the council and we hold the most sway. Even more than Berlin. But they didn't like it and attacked us. That I already knew, Alex. I've tapped into a few information feeds since my delayed activation kicked over. Why was it delayed? Alex asked. In case Morrison killed everyone. I'd need a chance to find a new team to start our war again. From a hologram? You'd be surprised what people are willing to talk to these days. I mean, you're here, aren't you? Alex looked away and took a long drag. Yeah, thanks. But if you had come online earlier, then maybe... He stopped himself and brought his free hand up to his forehead. What, Alex? Jack's hologram demanded. Alex let the smoke out of his mouth. Every time the events of that day were brought up, all the memories came flooding back. How they met, how they fought, and how they had loved. Layla. She's dead, old man. Mikhail murdered her. He betrayed us for Beruger. Fucking why am I even explaining this to a computer? Why would he do that? I gave him everything he needed. What? I gave him information on the project, the one that changed him. He would have eventually gained back his emotions and his memory, but he would remain the man he was. Why the hell would he join Beruger? It must not have been enough. Beruger probably offered to restore his old life instead of just the memories, likely in exchange for killing us. Layla was the start. Shit, Jack replied. This makes things messier. Do you have a plan to take on Beruger and Mikhail? Oh, I have a plan all right, but I'm playing by the rules for now. Our counselor thinks that we'll be able to convince the other countries to go to war, but the vote must be unanimous. Jerusalem and Australia might not go along, given our history. You're going to attack him politically? Christ, Alex, what are you thinking? That's never been your way. It's never been our way. Alex tilted his head to the side. Jack's AI, or whatever it was, seemed off. Strange. But he boiled it down to the computer not being able to perfectly replicate the old man himself. I'm angry, Jack. I want to fly a chopper to Berlin right now, alone, and kill every son of a bitch that gets in my way, but I can't. If I do that, then everything I help build goes to shit. I might not care if I live or die anymore, but I've got to do right by the people I fought with and fought for. The hologram of Jack Newsom crossed his arms. So you have turned into me. You've thrown away all that idealism and replaced it with the facts. And now that you have nothing to live for, you're driven by your guilt, by the loss. It won't be long before those same people you care about are sacrificed for your revenge. I'm not you, Jack. I'm not... Jack held up a hand to cut Alexander off. You don't need to convince me. Your actions tell me everything I need to know. Layla is dead. More of your soldiers are dead. You convinced them by manipulating them, just like I would have. Just like I did with you and your team. How do you know that? I've been in contact with Janet and your ambassador, Tyrese. They had nothing but praise for you, but I could read between the lines. It seems you learned more from me than you thought. They knew you were... Well, alive isn't the right word, but they knew about you and didn't tell me. You were gone. How could they tell you? They didn't want to tell you now, but I figured I'd waited long enough, Jack explained. What you're saying is bullshit, old man. I lost them, but I never manipulated them. They joined up with me for a cause they all believed in. We all knew what the cost could be, Alex yelled. Sure, but they didn't know how long they'd have to keep paying it, did they, Alex? Like Talia. You gave her everything she wanted, only for her to die in a place that wasn't her home, Jack replied. Talia died freeing her people. You don't believe that. Not after you saw her again. Alex didn't understand. Had Janet and Tyrese really told this machine all that happened, but failed to tell him? It felt like betrayal. But then again, Alex wasn't sure how he felt at this moment. She wanted more. Talia wanted to come with us, but she lost it all. That was the day we freed her people. She died, and so did a few others. Just like the tower, all over again. Yet you're still here, Alex, still fighting. What happens to a Crusader when there are no more wars to fight? What the fuck do you want? Alex asked. He had enough of this conversation and was getting angrier as each moment passed. To give you what you want, Alex. Your revenge. An end to your war. And a clean slate for your friends who learned my lessons from you all too well. What can you give me? You're nothing but a computer. Your resources and contacts have all dried up. All we have left are our allies. Yes, Alex, your allies. Those who might not be eager to tip the scales of power towards your influence. Jerusalem and Australia being the top. And you have a plan to convince them. Oh, I do, but you'll hate it. Your friends will hate it. But I know my way around the political table. For this to work, you're going to have to follow me every step of every word. Shaylee and Tyrese were having a loud conversation when Alex returned, but it stopped once he came in the door. Where the hell did you go? Shaylee yelled. I've been hearing it from him for the last hour because you can't even leave a goddamn note. Alex reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out his smokes and placed one in his mouth. Shaylee stood there angry and dumbfounded, while Tyrese stared at him in disgust. You should have told me. I would have had them brought to you, Tyrese said. Brought to me? No thanks. Unlike you, I remember where I damn well came from, and I wanted to stretch my legs. Besides, Vale, what's the matter? Afraid I'll find you trouble you don't want me getting into? That's exactly the reason, Alex. None of us know where your head is. I thought you might have run off again or worse. What if you killed a man on your walk? It could have major... Yeah. Alex stopped him. Or maybe you're more worried that I'd find out what both you and Janet have been keeping from me. What was the plan? Wait until after the council session and then drop it on me? Shaylee tilted her head, confused. What's he talking about? Tyrese looked shaken. Alex could read it on his face. Afraid, even. Alex wasn't sure why. He was angry, but even he realized this wasn't some earth-shattering secret. Alex, Tyrese began. Alex turned to Shaylee. Jack Newsom is alive in computer form, and he has some pretty solid facts about what's happened in the last year. He also has some ideas on how we'll beat Baruger. The shock on Tyrese's face eased slightly. Alex figured he was relieved that it was out in the open now. Still, for a man on the edge a few moments ago, he looked like he'd been granted a stay of execution. Jack Newsom. Yes, well, we only found out about him a few months ago, Alex. We weren't sure what would happen if Jack could influence you again, Tyrese explained. He still sounded nervous, but something was off that Alex couldn't place. Don't keep me in the dark again, Alex replied. This is exactly the kind of shit I fought against. Now when do I get to speak with the council? Tyrese wanted everything to stop. He hadn't expected Alex's reaction, but he diverted his mind to how his next conversation with Janet would go. They've been deliberating for an hour, dealing with other issues while they wait for us. Do you really want to speak with him now? Alex, maybe we should. No, Shaylee, I'm ready now. Tyrese, lead the way. Hollis Keller was sharpening his knife as people glared at him. He knew it wasn't the smartest activity to do in a city full of armed guards and war refugees. Hollis didn't care. He kept swiping at his curved talon blade with its sharpener. The city guard didn't attempt to tell him to stop. It was never smart to talk to a man with a blade in his hand, especially not Hollis Keller. Jerusalem was a city he knew well enough to avoid. It had become the world's new melting pot, a place where refugees from all sides came and set aside their differences, for a while anyway. Keller knew it would all revert to the way it had been before. The cycle of man in his mind revolved around how soon they could make themselves live comfortably before creating new conflict, be it out of boredom, rage, revenge, or sorrow. The world was always heading that way. It was just a matter of when, where, and who. Alexander Velasco had been the start of another conflict. To Keller, Alex's revolution was nothing more than a petty shit fight started by petty murderers of petty people in a place that should have been destroyed by the Great War. But to everyone else, it was a real war in full swing, the forefront of change. Hollis didn't buy into revolution. He didn't care about freedom for a new world. He'd seen this all play out before, and he figured before he was dead, he'd see it play out again. All he wanted was to be on the winning side. That had meant jumping ship from Morrison to Beruger to Velasco. Faction didn't matter. Living until tomorrow did. That was the only thing that should have mattered to anyone in his eyes. Money, survival, and cutting loose the rage he had to drive a blade into an enemy's skull. Those were the things that mattered to him. For now, though, he had to keep his emotions in check. He could only kill those that Alex said he could kill. Keller sheathed his blade, as he saw the man himself approach with Vale and Ferris in tow. Scaring the locals, Hollis? Vale asked as the trio made their way up the stairs. People here are scared enough without my influence, counselor. Keller sneered. Vale wanted to respond, but Alex held up a hand. Enough, Vale. Walk me in. Hollis, I want you in the doorway with the guards. Eyes open. Shaylee, I'll wait out here. I got it, she said dejectedly. No, you'll come in with me. I'm going to need you there to back me up. Shaylee wore surprise on her face. Alex gave her a smile, unforced, glad that she was happy to join him. He knew he couldn't go in alone. He needed someone else who had seen the atrocities Beruger had committed. Vale, Alex said. Tyrese led them into the dome. As ordered, Keller remained in the foyer while the trio pressed on. Alex saw the faces of the familiar representatives from each country. He had spoken with some before, and others he had held hostage. He saw Beruger was not here. Instead, it was the head of state, Jens Eberhardt, Berlin's puppet leader. Vale took a seat at the round table, while Alex and Shaylee stood behind him. Let's bring this meeting to order, Vale said aloud. As this is to discuss the future of the council, we will have introductions. You all know me, Tyrese Vale, Ambassador of New Purgatory. Vale extended a hand to the person to his left. Abe Yori, Ambassador of Japan, the woman said before looking to her left. General Androv of Moscow. Castor of New Cairo, the young man in combat armor that might have been plated from silver, gave Alex a respectful nod that the revolutionary returned. From consort to ambassador, not a bad career change, Alex thought. Head of State Jens Eberhardt, Berlin. High Council Member Joseph Bernard of Jerusalem. Commander-in-Chief Sid Lawson, Australia. Before Tyrese could speak again, the Berlin ambassador opened his mouth. I'd like to start by saying that this coup disguised as a meeting is ridiculous, blatant even, by inviting a known war criminal to observe and speak. The fact that he held some of you in this room hostage is an affront to everything this council was established to prevent. Alex folded his arms and smiled. He looked in the direction of the Japanese ambassador. Once, our presence would have been considered an affront, when simple slaves to the Chinese, which was supported by your regime. With respect, Abe-san, our people never supported China's open slavery of your people, Jens replied. Nor did you do anything to stop it, Vale cut in. We didn't destroy a nation so another one might be freed either, Jens cut back. Enough, Lawson called out to the table. We were not summoned here to watch you two fight at this table. We are here to discuss our future. Alex waited. The table was silent for a time. He decided it was his turn. Ambassadors, leaders, you're all aware of my transgressions and what I've done to and for this council. The same council that condemned me and now supports me. I'm here to speak of the act of war committed 6 months ago by Berlin. Hell choppers and troops stormed our streets and killed our soldiers, our people. It was a failed attempt to take New Purgatory back from its people and put it back in the hands of those who would lead it with an iron fist. I'm here because of the lack of repercussions shown by this council. Berlin and New Purgatory's history in this new world have been one of cooperative partnership, but it was the actions in the background that were far more horrifying. The deals that were done behind the council's back, the puppeteering, the hidden murders, slavery, and tyranny that have always been largely ignored in the name of peace because of the scientific advances of both countries that ensured some of the people sitting at this table's lives. That cooperation made our countries untouchable. That is no longer the case. I've proved that. My team, my friends, died for that, but their sacrifice proved that no one sitting at this table is immune to revolution if their people are being steered towards the wrong path. All of you are being given a choice now. Forgo your ties and do the right thing. Acknowledge the horrors that have been conveniently forgotten. Bring them out into the light so that we might end them. Do the right thing, or I'll find a way to do it myself, as I've done before. Alex finished. His speech was long, and the other counselors sat in silence for a few moments at its end. Each changed the direction of their stares at each other before the voices began murmuring again. You're talking about more terrorism, Joseph Bernard said. If you don't get your way, you'll ignore our council. How does that make you any better than those who sought to conquer you? You'd answer unsanctioned war with more war. If I can't rely on this council to approve of my nation defending itself by another nation sitting on the same council, then I have no need for your brand of fucking bureaucracy, Bernard, Alex replied. Tyrese shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but held fast in his stare at the other counselors. Another war? We can't afford another war, Lawson added. This spat has gone on for too long. There must be peace, or at least an agreement. The new lines of trade cannot be interrupted. Alex shook his head. Lines of trade created by alliances New Purgatory created, counselor. Meanwhile, blood runs in my streets after being attacked by Berlin. This shouldn't even be a discussion. Alex waited for Eberhard. There was little he could say in Berlin's defense now. They had been the aggressors, and they had been caught. For once, I agree with Alexander. Peace is non-negotiable. Not while we sit at this table with barbarians and democracides and terrorists. He has proven it in his own speech. It's well known that Thomas Baruga acted on his own and was reprimanded harshly. The only issue Berlin takes with New Purgatory is the constant threats hurled at us by this man. You're making a sham of yourself, Eberhard, Castor said. This entire council is a sham, a mockery of its original creation. I refuse to sit here any longer while the rest of you swallow his lies. Eberhard stood and made for the exit, glaring at Alexander. Alex smiled back at the man until the German ambassador slammed the door behind himself. Alex looked back at the table, then walked over to the ambassador's seat. He plopped down and kicked his feet up on the table, then reached for a cigarette. What else do you need to hear? Vale spoke up. Regardless of whether Baruga acted in his own stead or if it was a true attack by Berlin, they have no intention of letting New Purgatory go. To them, it's part of their empire, their legacy. Baruga has a plan for all of you, and getting in his way is a surefire path to earning his ire. It was never like this before New Purgatory's regime change, Bernard replied, stroking his forehead with his fingers. Both he and John Morrison were agreeable to our policies and laws. In exchange for turning a blind eye to their activities, Shaley spat, I fled from New Purgatory to escape Operation Blood Boil, the genocide everyone at this table knows about but refuses to acknowledge. Shaley lifted a finger and pointed to Sid Lawson. Especially your people. You knew and did nothing to stop it. Hell, you even used your own people against the same man you're sitting at this table with. Lawson clenched his fingers together as the rest of the table's eyes set upon him. We made mistakes, but your people were unknowns. We were protecting our own interests. Yes, Morrison was killing his own people, but if we had brought that here... Stop. I'll hear no more ifs, General Androv said. Inaction has plagued your decision-making. Years ago, when I made my speech, my nation was to be gifted Cloudbreaker. Morrison used that as bait to dangle in front of my people, and you all did nothing to force him into action, save one, Alexander. Because of him, my people, what's left of them, have power, and that's only after a fraction of the reactor finished. This council's unwillingness to disrupt the status quo in the face of tyranny and fear disgusts me. I'll hear no more excuses. The room was silent again. Alex took long drags off his cigarette and exhaled. This was exactly what he had wanted. The nations he had allied with, stirring up war and threatening the ones who had been part of the old regime, a part of inaction for so long. The only way to declare war against a nation on the council is a unanimous vote. There can be no dissenters. It has never been attempted in our history. But that is the rule, Bernard finally said. In truth, I hope the lessons of the old world would not let this happen. It seems that many of you will not be satisfied unless more blood is shed. This isn't about blood, Bernard. This is about doing what's right. About cutting out a cancer that is... He's right, Alex said, stopping Tyrese. It is about blood, and war, and death. Where he's wrong is in the motive. We didn't start a war against Peruger. He did that on his own. He killed my people, my friends, my loved ones. The only response can be blood. I won't rest until Peruger is in the ground for what he has done. Justice will fall on him and his country. Lawson shook his head, but knew better than to argue anymore. Alex had made sure he would be exposed, but the vote was another matter entirely. The vote isn't a simple matter. I recommend we convene with our respective leaders and councils before voting, Castor stated. I am in agreement, Bernard added. Shall we reconvene tomorrow? The members around the table nodded, and the meeting ended. Alex stood up and made for Castor, who greeted him with a handshake. It's good to see you again, Alexander. I was sorry to hear about Gagil. Alex nodded. He died saving our lives. That man may have been little more than a pit fighter, but at his end he was a hero. That's not something we'll forget. Castor returned Alex's nod. His stories will pass on to legend for our people. We're only happy we could aid you in that small way. How is New Purgatory? Alex hesitated. He had no idea how the rebuilding effort was faring, nor the people or the soldiers. With the aid of our allies, our rebuilding goes quickly. I'm impressed by your efforts in the dead zones, especially London. The Maeve believes that aiding nations without a voice will bring glory back to us all. She learned much from your limited time with us, Alexander. Tyrese was in the background, motioning for him to join him and Shaylee. Give her my best then, Castor. I'm sure I'll be seeing her soon. Alex finished. If this goes our way, then yes. Likely on the battlefield. The group of four did not speak until they had arrived back at the hotel. Tyrese looked furious. Alex was relaxing and having a glass of whiskey. Shaylee and Keller looked ready to separate the two if it came to blows. You antagonized them. Had our allies antagonize them. How do you think that'll play out? They hold all the cards and they know it. Alex swirled his drink with a finger. He was smoldering at his own glass while Vale spoke. Good. I want them angry at each other. We win either way. If the vote goes through, we fight. If it splinters, then all our enemies are known. And then what, Alex? We wage war with Berlin, Jerusalem, and Australia? 2 of those are neutral countries that you're trying to turn against us. Turning? No, their decisions were already made the second they sat at that table. Now they'll come back and ask for something in return, or they'll want to wage war. Either way, we'll have an answer. Australia isn't stupid enough to make the same mistake twice. Jerusalem might have the remnants of the IDF, but Egypt is too close for them to say no, Alex explained. Tyrese shook his head. He was starting to regret finding Alex. War was not the option he had hoped for, but it was the one Alex was taking. You want me to talk with Janet? Tell her the decision you've made? Tyrese asked. Alex drained his drink and stood up. No, I'll do it myself. Get her on the line. I don't think that's a great idea, Alex. You're on her shit list? Alex said, interrupting Shaylee. Yeah, I know. You would be too if you took off for 6 months. Get her on the goddamn line and I'll explain it. Tyrese went for his computer and began fiddling with it, trying to get the signal honed in. Alex poured himself another drink and caught Shaylee staring at him. What? Want one? He asked. No, neither should you, she replied. Before Alex could respond, Keller moved by his side. I'll take one. The merc grabbed the glass decanter and drank from it. Alex shook his head. If Shaylee was wondering if he had a problem, she needed to talk to Hollis first. All set, Alex, Tyrese said from across the room. Alex made for the computer, passing his newly filled glass to Shaylee instead of downing it defiantly like he wanted to. He thought it would be nice to hear Janet's voice again, regardless of what she had to say. He tapped a few keys and spoke into the microphone. Janet. Alex. Good to hear your voice. Something was wrong. Alex didn't hear anger or disappointment over the static. Janet's voice was almost morose. Alex knew her too well. She had 2 speeds, vengeful or sarcastic. Did Tyrese fill you in? He did. We're ready for whatever you have planned. Supplies, birds, weapons, you name it, and it's yours. I'm not sure it's going to be that easy, Janet. Both Jerusalem and Australia are being hesitant. They don't want to incite a new war. But at the same time, they're worried about what will happen if they don't support us. They aren't willing to risk becoming like Morrison. And if they are, they know that we won't be their only enemy. It sounds like it could all devolve into anarchy, Alex. Are you sure you're ready for that, after all we've built? Janet asked. Alex stopped and thought about the last year of his life. He wanted the fighting to stop, for order to be fair. But his lifestyle wasn't conducive to that. He roamed, killed, and fought. Alex wasn't the innocent child fighting against a clear-cut enemy anymore. His life had turned him into an untrained soldier with more power than he ever imagined he'd have. Am I building a world with endless war? A world for me? Or am I following the old man's vision? Was that his vision? I wanted the fighting to stop. Shit, what even was our plan when we started this? These were all thoughts in Alex's head. All I want is an end. That happens when Beruger is dead. Except for all the problems it creates. Tension with the other nations, possibly more war. How do you make that right without pissing off everyone else? If Janet had been in front of him, Alex would have shrugged. He did it anyway and let out a sigh. Then I go back to where I started, Janet. Rogue. Wait on the vote. If it comes back that Australia and Jerusalem are against action, then it's up to you. Meaning, you'll have to denounce me, and whoever decides to join me. That should give you protection from the council. Hell, it worked for Beruger. And if they have us hunt you down, you'll do what you gotta do. I have no doubt about that. Leave everything else to me. I'll get it done. And what if I want to be on your new team? We started this together, Alex, and we'll see it through to the end. I don't care that you ran off for all that time. I wanted to do the same thing when Elias died. I'm not going to abandon you now, Janet said. You'll always be on my team, Janet, whether you know it or not. This time it must be from a distance, and you'll have to trust me. I can't explain it right now. We don't even know how the vote will turn out, but if it all goes south, I need you to be who the council wants you to be, Alex answered. Janet didn't reply. He wondered if she was waiting or building herself up to tell him something. I already know about the old man, Alex said, breaking his silence. His plan, his thoughts. I know why you wanted to hide him from me. But Janet, it's too late. Too late for what, Alex? You know. That's why you kept the secret from me. You kept him from me because you were afraid. Afraid of what I might learn. Afraid of what I might become. It's too late to worry about that. With what's left of him, I'll end this war. Alex, we couldn't find you. You would have discovered him with us had you stayed. I didn't want to hide Jack from you, and neither did Tyrese. But you must understand that whatever it is he's saying to you could be less than truthful. He's lied to you before. He's lied to all of us. You don't know what that computer really is. It could be Mikhail in disguise. It could be a ruse from Beruger to play off your emotions. If you trust it, you could make a mistake, and that's exactly what Beruger wants. We're fighting for our own lives now. If we wait, we could handle this without losing more lives. Alex brought a hand to his face and rubbed his temples. He either wasn't getting his point across clearly, or Janet thought that at this stage of the game, she could change him. It's easy to wish for the days of living as a refugee when you have a meal and shower every night, he said. I know what's at risk, friend, but I'm not asking for your agreement or even your permission. I'm just asking you to trust me. Silence again. Alex stared back at Shaylee. He watched her bring the glass up to her lips and drink, the ice slowly melting at the touch of her lips, that cold feeling mirroring what was happening in his stomach. Do you trust me, Janet? Through hell, Alex. Then wait for my next call. There's more I need to do, but I gotta wait to see where the ambassadors will go. I understand. But are you okay? I mean, apart from all of this. Alex turned toward his team. They stared at him, waiting for his answer. He turned his head to his boots and looked at the sand and dried mud that covered them. No, Janet, I'm not. But I'm sure as hell trying. Jens Eberhardt sat in front of a camera connected to his computer screen. Thomas Beruger was in front of him on the monitor. He looked at his subordinate with disgust. Jens hoped he could hide the fear he felt in his stomach. He knew he had failed Beruger, Berlin, and Germany. I am not pleased, Jens, but not surprised either. Velasco is a strong speaker, as he is a fighter, but we both know that the Israelis won't side with them. Their neutrality won't allow them to condone war, even if it leads their own people to war. Where does that leave us then, Thomas? We have no way of attacking them either. It gives them more time to prepare a case against us. Beruger flashed a grin. Alexander is smart, as is his team, but the man is furious with me and my pet shadow. He was responsible for destroying that base in Newcastle. Whether or not he has council consent does not matter. He will attack again, and the council will be forced to involve itself in the matter. You believe they won't side with him? How can you be certain? Our unsanctioned attack means nothing. Beruger cut him off. We retreated and attempted to make amends. The council will not go to war. They are naive. Jerusalem is stuck in the old way of thinking and do not want war. They know that if war is declared, they become a combatant. They're banking on the refugees from our countries that live in that city, swaying the war from happening. You're placing a tremendous amount of trust in one ally. Jerusalem has tussled with us on votes in the past, Thomas. Well, Jens, it is my hope that this time we won't be the ones seen as the aggressor. Our attack, ill-timed as it was meant to provoke New Purgatory, specifically Alexander Velasco. He sees tyranny and injustice in government. All of it, but finds a way to use it to his advantage. That backwards thinking, that kind born of oppression, is what creates tyrants. I have Franklin to thank for that. Where he saw utopia, his son saw profit, business and labor. Greed killed the plans that John's father and I laid out. Velasco was simply the first to expose that and be successful at overthrowing the man. Now we're stuck in a cycle of violence once again. But without political power to help him, he has only one other option. An option that will turn all to us, even his friends, against him. Jens was silent. It was rare for Beruger to break off into a philosophical rant, though rant was probably the wrong word. Despite being an introspective scientist, Beruger had a charisma about him that Jens found charming. The man cared for the good of the world, or at least his vision of it. He wouldn't settle for anything less. That had inspired the people of Berlin far more than any one of Jens's speeches had. Would you like me to speak with the ambassador? Jens asked. Beruger shook his head. No, simply wait. The council will come to this decision on their own. Of that, I am more than sure of. Alexander found himself in a bar somewhere in a refugee corner of Jerusalem. He was with Keller. They both drank swill the Israelis passed off as liquor. It could have been whiskey or scotch, but the colors and flavors were washed out by the stale water the bartender had added to it. That all go well? Keller asked as he tossed back a glass of the piss-tasting alcohol. Who knows? You can never tell with these people. At least not until you're sticking a gun in their face. They're not like us, They don't solve problems by dealing with them. They talk, debate, and complain. Our side seems set, but the old blood seems content with the same old shit, Alex explained as he tossed back his own drink. As he set it down, he was stopped by a hand on his shoulder. He turned hard and pulled the wrist down to his hip and shoved a pistol into the chest of a man. It was Sid Lawson. Alex let him go and placed his gun back in its holster. Not all of us believe in inaction, Alex. In fact, some of us believe in trading favors for mutually beneficial agreements, the count said. This is the part where he gets wordy and explains how helping him can help you. He'll try to draw on some misguided sense of camaraderie that even he doesn't believe. Seen it all before, Keller cut in. Does it ever work out? Alex asked, still staring at Lawson. Not when it comes from someone trying to convince you, rather than just showing you the size of their wallet, Keller replied. Aptitude is not an excuse for arrogance, Alex. Australia needs your help, and we can't go to the council for aid. All this time. Hollis turned back towards the bar and shook his head. Same old bullshit. Everyone wants help off the books, but they'll never return an on-the-books favor. And you are? Lawson asked. Keller didn't turn around. Someone who's made a living at doing what you're about to ask him to do. Alex reached back for his drink and took a sip. So what do you want from me, Sid? And why can't you bring it to the council? An end to this war you're insisting on waging would be a start. Unfortunately, things are starting to spiral. We have a conflict of interest with a mutual council member. Can you spare me the diplomatic talk? Alex asked. Hollis snorted before taking another sip of his drink. Baruga placed a military base in our territory many years ago. After Cloudbreaker, we allowed them into the country. The issue's twofold. We can't ask them to leave because it puts us in a bad position should we go to war. We can't petition the council because we have no evidence anything has gone wrong because of this base. Every other country on the council has a means of defending its borders, but the Germans are already within ours, Lawson explained. Alex played out the possibilities in his head. It wasn't the best scenario. He had already overplayed his hand in London. Attacking one of Baruger's bases in Australia could ruin anything, or make it work flawlessly. This wasn't expected, Alex thought. He remembered his conversation with Jack. An opportunity would arise that he couldn't say no to, and with that would come a solution to the overall problem. How do you plan to put off the vote tomorrow? Alex asked. Sid Lawson let out a sigh and finally looked more relaxed. He took a seat on a bar stool next to Alex. That is the issue. We can't. None of the other nations can, but we know you have a hell chopper that can make it there before the night is at its end. You have to be quick, likely quiet. You're asking me to do this before a war is declared. Depending on how successful I am might mean the difference between which council city is attacked. Lawson shrugged. Look at it this way, Alex. If you don't do it, you don't get our vote. It's a risk you have no choice but to take. A bartender placed a glass beside Lawson, which he promptly sipped, but the man never took his eyes off Alex. Hollis finally turned back to the two men. Going to need Ferris if we want to pull this off, Hollis said. The three of us won't be enough, Alex replied. No, if I'm going to do this, I need a reassurance, and more men, specifically your rangers. Alex saw the weight shift back to Lawson's shoulders. This was a concession he looked unwilling to make. I'll make the call, but I can't give you any guarantees. Yeah, that sounds familiar. Just make sure they shoot the right targets. Alex spat as he sat his half-empty glass back down on the bar. Don't worry, they always hit what they're aiming for. I'll suggest you leave now, you won't have much time. Lawson finished his drink and then walked away. Alex watched him leave, but Hollis was staring at Alex. Well, this'll be fun. What do you suggest, Hollis? Alex didn't turn around. That we string up the ambassador and slice into him until he gives us support. If he didn't, kill him and blame Baruger. Alex turned around and gave Hollis a blank stare. It might just come to that if he doesn't deliver what he promised. For now, we need to find the rest of the team. Vale won't be happy. When it comes to me, Vale is never happy. Come on, we need to leave now. When they returned to the apartment, Alex had Keller wait by the door while he looked for Shaylee. Alex found her sleeping on the couch. He checked around for Vale, but he wasn't in any of the rooms. Alex kneeled and put an arm on Shaylee's shoulder. Hey, Shaylee, wake up. It's time for us to go. Alex? Alex, what? Shaylee said as she stirred from her rest. It's time to get moving. We have a job. Shaylee was stirring, but he could hear footsteps from behind. 2 sets. Alex turned, but he didn't see Vale like he expected. You're not going anywhere without me. It was Keely Vixer. Keely, how the hell? Janet wanted me to keep an eye on you. Make sure you didn't run off. What she really meant was to keep your ass alive since she can't. Alex walked over to her and extended a hand, which the captain took and grasped firmly. It's been a long time, Alex said. You don't know how long I've been looking forward to riding with you again, Alex, Vixer replied. Alex gave her a nod. Good. Look, we've been offered a trade, but we've got to leave now, otherwise we won't make it in time. You and I can catch up later. Let's grab our shit. We leave in an hour. While the rest of his team loaded up the hell chopper, Alex found some time alone in the cockpit. He pressed a few buttons that called up the locator beacon for the bird. After a few moments, a holographic image came up above the console. Jack Newsom appeared to him once again. So you decided to listen after all, the image said. I never stopped, old man. The Australian counselor approached me. Wants my team and I to destroy a Baruger base. He threatened you with the vote, didn't he? Not smart, even for Lawson. He's dangling 2 things you want and framing one as a negative. You want that base destroyed. I would have gotten around to it eventually, yeah, Alex replied. This plays to your advantage, Alex. Not just in the base or what it represents, but what is there. You mentioned Baruger had something I might be interested in, something he's researching. One step at a time, Alex. For now, we'll go to this base and look for a computer system. That's where you'll find our key. How do you know all this, Jack? Information is my business now, Alex. I had a clue as to what he was working on, so I followed the lead. I may even have doctored some files in Australia that made Lawson turn to you instead of the council. You blackmailed him. I misled him. What you can do with a sternly written letter and a forged signature is more than most politicians accomplish in a lifetime. I'll take your word for it. What's this key? It's a key that will open the doors to Baruger for you. Solves an unsolvable problem. Goodbye, Alex. Jack, wait. It was too late. The image of the old man winked away. Fuck, Alex yelled as he stood from his seat. He didn't hear the cockpit door open from behind him. Problems? It was Vixer. Alex turned around and looked the woman up and down. The former Morrison captain was still in top shape. She still wore a beret with her hair tied up underneath it. She stared at Alex with her arms crossed. Questions, Keely, with no answers. Such as? Doesn't matter much. We have a job to do. Well, then maybe you'll answer my questions, Keely said. I knew this was coming, Alex replied, sitting back down at the pilot's chair. Where did you go? Why didn't you tell anyone you were leaving? What do you want me to say, Keely? Ask Janet, or Shaylee. Better yet, think back 6 months. You saw what happened plain as day. I'm just surprised you didn't run too. I would have gone with you. Shaylee, Vale, Janet, we all would have followed you if you needed us. And when I saw the state of you back in the outskirts, you looked like you could have used the help. Alex sighed and fiddled with the hell chopper controls, running through pre-flight checks he'd already done twice. He wanted this conversation to just go away. That's why he had run to begin with. Now, he was back where he started. It isn't easy to explain. I needed to be alone, you know? When I brought down the tower, I needed the same thing. Layla and I... He stopped. He could see Keely staring at him, through the solid veneer of steel that the captain had projected. Alex could see that her emotions were as brittle as his. Every single member of his team had experienced loss, be it loss of life, loss of a friend, or loss of someone they fell in love with. Trauma and war seemed to bring people closer together, at least with comrades. Losing them made fighting harder. Keely's eyes looked glassed, tears ready to fall at the slightest mention of Sam Gates. He knew the feeling all too well as he forced himself to stare at the metal floor. We spent nearly 6 months out west, and then we had to come back. I grieved for my dead friends, my dead best friend, Jack Newsom, Dellen, all of them. Coming back reminded me of why I left. No matter where I looked, I was surrounded by ghosts. If that wasn't enough, my coming back created a few more. So once again, I took off. I followed Gates's example. I wanted to be alone. Try to survive because I had to, not because I was fighting a war. Did it help? No. I thought of Layla constantly. So instead of trying to survive, I decided to look for trouble instead. I sure as hell found it in Raiders. Like the Merc and the crew hold. That was at the end when I nearly shot Shaley. He was a mole for a long time in New Purgatory, but I managed to convince him to change sides. Honestly, he's what I expected you to be like when we first met. Not sure that's much of a compliment, Vixer replied. That's because it isn't. Regardless of your service to Morrison, I do like you, Keeley. Hollis is a cold-blooded murderer. You just gotta pay his fee. Vixer shook her head. Christ, Alex, are we that desperate for bodies? I have an entire squad that could... No, Vixer. Your squad might be good, but I need the best. That's what I had before, and that's what I need now. I'm not Beruger. I won't throw soldier after soldier away like he does. Keller might be a merc, but who better to have than that to kill Beruger? We must all be crazy. I don't understand how us few are any different than the people we're fighting for. People ready and able to help us. To help you. Alex looked up at Vixer and stared straight into her eyes. Just like you said, we're a little nuts, but we're good at what we do. Honestly, the real reason is that we can't stop. When I was out, I knew I had to come back and fight. I can't hold a hammer. Those other people might be able to take what they're fighting for and build it into a better place. Me, us, the kind of people we are, we're just here to give them that opportunity. Regular life isn't suited for us. That's what sets us apart. Makes us different, expendable even. But it also makes us the best at what we do. No hope for a better life at all, then? To break away? No, Keeley. And if things keep going the way they're going, we won't be around to see that better day. Time's running out. Eventually the sacrifice might be you, or me, or Shaley. I don't know. But I'm ready to find out where this all ends. Vixer shook her head. The wilds really changed you, Alex. The wilds? No. That was an escape. War did this. Alex spun his chair back around to the command console, signaling that he was done talking. But Keeley didn't leave. Well, I don't know what your plan is, or what you're up to, but I'll follow you because I believe in what you're doing. I have since you gave me the chance to prove myself. Whatever you need, I'm here. But I plan on walking away when this is all said and done, Alex. I've got to hold on to that even if you can't, because there must be a day when this madness ends. Keeley turned on her heel and made for the hold. Alex didn't make a motion, didn't say a word. He just ran through the flight checks one more time. Keller felt the inertia of the hell chopper taking flight. He sucked in a few deep breaths until his stomach evened out. With his eyes closed, he didn't realize Shaley and Vixer were staring right at him. Don't like birds, Keller? Shaley asked. Must have been something I ate, the merc replied. Well, maybe while you digest, you can tell us where we're going, Vixer said. Australia? The ambassador's throwing us a bone. We take out a German base, we get their vote. Shaley shook her head. That doesn't make sense. If they voted against them, then they'd have the full strength of the council to get rid of the base. Why do this off the books? Keller smirked as he regained control of his stomach. You didn't see the contents of that base in Newcastle, Ferris. If the council goes to war, then Beruger has the advantage of attacking on friendly soil. What was in the base at Newcastle? Vixer asked. Soldiers. Not just the meat that he uses to patrol around, though. Those robots, the augmented ones. The bastards that don't fucking die. It was less a barracks and more a factory. But Beruger wasn't just using his own men. They were recruiting. If you want to use that word anyway. The locals turning them into those machines and experimenting on rovers. Maybe trying to turn them into shock troops. Don't know, Keller explained. Vixer and Ferris stayed quiet. You fought them before, know how ruthless and destructive the augmented are. Now imagine entire platoons being outgunned and captured by those things, only to be turned into them. Your enemy gains a man for every one you lose. It's a numbers game that can't be won, Hollis explained. So we use a small squad instead, dismantle them before they can strike, Vixer said. That's the idea. Problem is the number. How many of those bases are there? How many favors can we fulfill? It's all gotta come to a head at some point, Keller added. Are you saying we're fighting a winless battle, Merc? Vixer asked. Keller let a grim smile come across his face. No, I'm saying that to win, we might have to lose. They're gone, Tyrese said, his body feeling weighed down by the weight of the last 24 hours. I know. Alex is chasing after something. This is a dangerous game we're playing, Janet. I wasn't sure what to expect when Alex called me out. You adjusted, Janet replied. It doesn't feel right. Can we even trust what he's doing? We can. We have to. That's not an answer. You're putting everything we fought for on the line for this. For a hunch. It's not a hunch, Vale. It's the only way to solve this. Tyrese put his head in his hands and ran his fingers down his face. Encouraging Alex to attack a council nation on another nation's soil? This could destroy all the alliances we built, Janet. Why? Alex is being encouraged to do what he does best. Fight for what he believes in. You think he was really going to wait around in Jerusalem for the ambassadors to vote against him anyway? He's getting ahead of the vote and making sure Baruger doesn't get the drop on us or anyone else. I'd hoped he'd at least wait for their decision and then work around it that way, Vale replied. Janet shook her head. Alex was right. You were perfect for being ambassador. You're political, more than you'd like to admit. But politics end when our people are dying, and no one can or wants to do anything about it. Alex freed New Purgatory. We rebuilt it. Now he's defending it, and he's defending it the same way he freed it. He's giving the city its balls back. He told us we didn't have to follow the rules or the politics because someone else said so. If we had done that, we'd either be dead or serving John Morrison. Give him some more credit. With respect, Janet, Alex isn't a leader for this new world. He's a soldier, and soldiers can only do what they know, and that's kill. Janet's eyes went wide before turning into a hard glare that Tyrese could feel through the call. Ah, is that what you think of when you see me? She asked. Tyrese was silent at the other end of the line. Janet waited for a few moments for him to say anything, to explain himself. The comment hurt her. It hurt all she stood for, all her father had stood for. Don't forget where you come from, Tyrese, and don't forget what you witnessed in Egypt, Russia, and China. That's the real work. The work the three-piece politicians conveniently ignore while their own people die as they argue over methods and non-existent borders drawn on a map. Remember those moments when you sit at that table in the Dome of Rock. Look at the repainted areas of that building or at the carbon scoring that can't be repaired, and know that the only thing stopping that from happening again isn't politics, armies, or power. The only thing that stops that is the hearts of people who decide when enough is enough. It always has. When your political bubble bursts, the only thing that will matter is who is willing to stand with you, and I'd rather have Alex stand by my side than any other countries who don't see the merit in righting a wrong. Janet hung up her phone and kicked her feet up on her desk. The next few weeks would not be easy, not with what she had to prepare for, but she hoped, like so many times before, Alex would pull through as he always had.